Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tackling the Stoic Executioner. Okay, let's dive into this because we're about to completely reframe a core concept that literally every trader out there thinks they've got nailed down. But, they usually completely ignore the second that opening bell rings. We're talking about position sizing. Pretty much every educator in the world frames it as this strict mathematical risk management thing. But as we're going to see, it's fundamentally about self-knowledge. This creates a bit of an uncomfortable mirror moment for a lot of us, doesn't it? I mean, we all know the universal rule. We've heard it 1,000 times. Risk 1 to 2%, never risk more than you can afford to lose, right? The math is incredibly simple, and the rule is perfectly clear. But man, the reality is a completely different story. This exact same trader who knows that math by heart will routinely just toss it out the window like it's a polite suggestion. You know the drill? Sizing way up after a hot winning streak, or shrinking down to basically nothing at all after 3 painful losses in a row, or maybe just going full size on a random trade simply because you've got a gut feeling about it, while barely putting any capital behind a perfectly valid A+ setup just because you're feeling a little hesitant. Look, if position sizing were purely mathematical, none of that would ever happen. Percentages don't magically change based on your mood.
So the crucial point is this: position sizing is not math. It's a mirror. When you decide to ditch your pre-calculated numbers, the actual size you type into that order ticket tells you exactly who you are in that specific, fleeting moment. Honestly, it's way more accurate than any personality test you could ever take. It grabs your hidden internal emotional state and just projects it right out into the live market for execution. Think about it. Every single time you deviate from your written sizing rule, you're creating a data point. And that data point is about you, not the market. Let's break this down a bit. When you size up way beyond your rule, something inside you has grabbed the steering wheel. Maybe it's overconfidence after a crazy winning streak, or maybe it's that desperate, gnawing need to make back recent losses, like right now. Or maybe it's just pure excitement over a setup that looks too good to fail. On the flip side, when you size down below your rule, something else is running the show. Usually it's fear. Fear after a losing streak, or just a total lack of conviction in your overall system. It's a self-protective instinct, trying to keep the next loss emotionally survivable, which sadly also makes the inevitable win mathematically completely useless. In either direction, changing your size on the fly isn't a tactical trading decision. It's a psychological disclosure. You're no longer managing your risk, you are managing your emotions, and you're using your position size to do it. Now, I really want to pause here for a second because we need to let the sheer magnitude of this finding land. The legendary trading psychologist Tharp put it perfectly. He said, "Position sizing is the single variable that most determines whether a trader achieves mathematical potential or systematically underperforms." Let that sink in. It's not your sniper entry. It's not your flawless exit. It's not your super secret proprietary indicator. It is your size. Emotional sizing destroys the exact edge your system was built to give you. And it doesn't usually happen in one giant dramatic account blowout. No, it happens quietly. Consistently, just one emotionally driven tweak at a time. Two traders can have the exact same entries, the exact same win rate, and emotional sizing will completely wreck one of their equity curves while the other one thrives. To actually fix this, we're going to ground this very modern trading problem in some ancient wisdom. Look, Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius obviously weren't trading crypto at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, but they understood human psychology flawlessly. They taught that we should use external events as mirrors to read our own internal state. Marcus Aurelius actually wrote a lot about the discipline of examining not just what you do, but the impulse behind why you do it. The Stoics had a word for this, horme. It translates to the initial impulse or movement of the soul toward an object. In trading, your position size is quite literally the most honest, raw, external expression of that internal impulse. Why? Because it's a specific, hard number. You typed it in. You can't just rationalize it away later like you can a fleeting thought or a passing feeling. So here's what you need to start asking yourself. It's a highly specific question. What was the impulse that produced this size? Notice, I'm not asking if the size was tactically right or if the trade ended up in profit. No. I'm asking you to identify the internal feeling that actually caused that specific number to appear on your screen. When you pinpoint that impulse, boom, your previously invisible emotional state suddenly becomes visible. And once it's visible, you can name it, you can examine it, and you can actually correct it. But if you just leave that internal state unexamined, it's going to keep producing those exact same deviations indefinitely, and you'll just keep tricking yourself into calling it tactical discretion. And this brilliantly illustrates a core distinction we absolutely have to make. Look, we are not saying you have to trade a rigid, mechanical size that blindly ignores all market context. Not at all. Rules-based size variation is 100% legitimate. If your tested system explicitly tells you to size down because, say, you're in a low volatility environment today, you're executing a strategy, that's great. But emotional size variation, that's pure self-disclosure. If you're sizing down simply because you feel uncertain or afraid, you aren't executing your system anymore. You're executing your fear. So, how do we actually bridge this gap? How do we build true Stoic discipline into our daily trading? Well, we use what we call the execution protocol. It's this incredibly effective 3-step architecture designed specifically to separate your emotional trading from your system trading. It's made up of a specific written rule, a size deviation log, and a 30-second psychological check. Let's break down exactly how you can implement each of these steps to permanently bulletproof your edge. Let's move to and see how this builds, starting with step 1. Your sizing rule has to be written down with complete specificity before your trading session even begins. No exceptions. As you see in the formula, combining your account size, your risk percentage, and your stop distance spits out one specific, pre-calculated, non-negotiable number. We aren't talking about a suggested range here. It's one exact number. Now, if you are going to deviate from this exact number, you need a written justification that strictly references your trading plan. If your justification is just a gut feeling, I'm sorry, but that deviation is emotional, and the original pre-calculated size absolutely has to apply. Step 2 is the size deviation log. This needs to become a permanent, dedicated section in your trading journal. And listen, you're not doing this to beat yourself up over mistakes. You're doing it to study your own behavior. You need to relentlessly track the date, your intended rule size, the actual size you executed, the exact emotion you felt at the exact moment you made the decision, and finally, the outcome. Tracking these highly specific data points over, say, 90 days, it will permanently transform your sizing behavior. It reveals the undeniable exact correlations between specific feelings, like fear or greed, and your tendency to oversize or undersize. And what actually happens when you sit down and review all that data after 90 days? Well, in almost every single trader's log we've ever seen, the data delivers the exact same verdict. Emotional sizing underperforms rule sizing consistently. And the crazy part, it happens in both directions. Whether you oversized out of pure excitement or sized down to nothing out of fear, your bottom line is worse. And it's not just because you magically misread the market. It's because the emotional state that caused that very first sizing error, it infects the entire rest of the trade. That emotion messes with your exit. It makes you move your stop loss. It changes your hold duration. It just completely compounds the initial error and totally destroys your edge. Which brings us to our final safeguard, step 3. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how just a tiny, tiny pause can change your entire trading career. Right before you calculate your size, and this is absolutely crucial, before you open that order ticket, you just ask yourself, what is my emotional state right now? And is it neutral enough to actually produce a rule-based size? It takes exactly 30 seconds. If the answer is yes, great, proceed. But if the answer is no, you do not put on a size from that state. You physically step away from the terminal for 3 minutes to reset. Go grab some water. That tiny 3-minute pause creates the necessary space for your written rule to step back in and reassert its authority over your sudden emotional impulses. So I want to leave you with a very direct challenge today. I want you to go look back at your last 20 trades, just the last 20, nothing crazy. Out of those 20 trades, exactly how many times did your position size actually deviate from your strict written rule? And for every single one of those deviations, I want you to be brutally honest. Was the justification grounded objectively in your trading plan, or was it rooted purely in your emotional state? I want you to count both of those numbers up and write them down side by side. Because here's the reality. That ratio between your rule-based sizes and your emotional deviations, that is the exact ratio between your system trading and your emotions trading. So you really have to ask yourself, does your ratio compound your edge, or does it erode it away? Honestly, you probably already know the answer just by taking one glance at your equity curve. Position sizing is not just some dry mathematical formula divorced from the human being clicking the mouse. It's the ultimate mirror, the ultimate test of your internal state. If you want to master the market, you have to master the impulses driving your execution first. So as you gear up for your next trading session, I leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. Are your rules executing your trades today, or are your emotions?